Tonight we're going to finish up our lesson on the teleological argument, the argument from design on the existence of God. And once they've got, I don't know if you already talked to them, but she's got the video going already. Yeah, so you're good. Okay. Funny story. The first time we got that camera, I said, I want to take it on the hog hunt. So we took it on the hog hunt, and we were filming each other's hunts. So Gary's going to film Rob Gary. So we got back to watch, was looking at the footage, and it was apparently a pretty exciting hunt. Because we got to see a lot of this angle, the ground and the sky going up and down. So red means on, green means off, I think. So then right before he got to the critical moment of the hunt, turned it off. So he had it off the whole way. You know, get up there and get ready, turn it off. So what's up with that? Wait, so where he worked his whole life, that was the understanding? Oh, I'm just now finding this out. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so we're talking about the teleological argument, the existence of God from design. All right, so we're trying to hold you accountable here and make sure you're learning. No peeking at your papers. Kelly's like, I know he's going to ask, so I'm going to go ahead and study real quick. All right, so what's the first line of the cosmological argument, Kelly? You know it. Cosmological is the cause and effect. No peeking. Come on, you can do this. 2 weeks ago. Think of cause and effect. Sorta. Everything that... Yeah, everything that began or begins to exist has a cause. What's the second line? No, yeah. Yeah, began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. See, I knew you knew it. All right, teleological. All right, the word or teleology has to do with what? Teleology or teleological, what's the overarching? The first one's cause and effect. This one is, the word teleology means design or order. So that's what the focus of this one is. So what's our first line of this one? Yes. That was a group effort. Right? Every design has a designer. Do we need to be equipped to back this up with evidence? And do we have to spend a lot of time on this one? Why? Because it's evident. Because this is not hard to figure out. Because it's a universal truth. Cause and effect, same thing. Universal truth. Every design has a designer. Right? So, we could say then, what's the next line? Yes, you read that. The universe will... show... I could hear even your head go down a little bit to where your voice shows. highly, I'm going to add a couple words here, shows evidence. All right, three. Three is? Yeah, therefore, the universe, I like to say the word has a designer, because he's still there. All right, this makes sense? Is this good, logical, sound thinking? So, this, we don't have to spend any time, it's evident. This logically follows, right? So this and this are lock, stock, and barrel. Depending on if this is if we can back this up, right? So if we can back this up, then this works. So how do we go about backing this up? The universe shows evidence of highly complex design. Okay, patterns. Yep, complexity. There's all sorts of things. Yes, we're going to talk about that. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world. The old seashell. Yeah. Yep. There's a lot of fascinating things we can talk about. What did we talk about last week as we got started? What are some things we talked about? Okay, yes. Yes. Okay. So, now those things are important for what reason? Life where? Here. So, we understand that all these different factors that exist for life to exist here all have to be finely tuned and set up and designed. If any one of them were off, one way or the other, then life would not exist. So there's a whole number of these things. Now, what are these called? Okay? Laws? Some of them deal with laws like gravitational force and things like that. But these things that what fancy term did we say deals with? Molly, what'd you say? Yes. That's fine. The basic idea is the anthropic principle, which is undergirded by these what are called anthropic constants. And these anthropic constants are these things which must exist in order for life to exist here. Okay? They are complex variables. And each time we add another one of these principles, the probability of these things occurring in exactly the right way to support life by chance exponentially grows each time we add another one of these constants. So, I should have looked this up. I want to say the number of anthropic constants somewhere in the 20s of specific conditions which exist that support life here on Earth. If any one of them were different by marginal, then life would not exist here. So what this shows is that the probability, thinking from a statistical perspective, of this all happening by chance, it's virtually makes it impossible, even with our two heroes of evolution, those wonderful parents, Father Time and Mother Nature, right? Even with those two, there's still the probabilities off the charts that this could happen. So that's what we were talking about, these anthropic constants, and we got into a lot of these. And talking about the design of the universe, the scope of the universe. I bragged on you in my class last night. So we're teaching this some too. I said, yeah, when I was talking about the rotational speed of the Earth, I could see that one of my math guys here, and they started doing some numbers. He goes, so that means the circumference of the Earth is approximately 24,000 miles. And I said, somebody Googled it, and he was right on it. So The fact that you did that just in your head, that blew my mind. So, no, I mean, it's just, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but that was impressive. I bragged on you, and they were like, that's impressive. Because they had somebody look it up, and it was 24,612, or something, it was right there. So 1,000 is probably approximation. It's probably, 1,000 and 0.7. I don't know. I don't know the math. Okay. So now we began to talk a little bit about the design of the human body. And so as we did, we were talking about the human body may be considered at 4 different levels: the cell, the tissue, the organs, and the systems. And we said that a human body is composed of over 250 different kinds of cells, totaling approximately 100 trillion cells in an average adult. All the cells of the human body, if set end to end, would encircle the earth over 200 times. How many miles is that? Oh, you didn't hear me. Okay. All right. So, yeah, that is true. Now, each cell, we're going to talk about here now about the specific cells and what's happening with those. Now, we talked about the size of these cells. Yeah. Now, inside, we're talking about the cell itself. We talk about cells have 3 major parts. First, each cell has a cell membrane that surrounds it. Second, inside the 3-dimensional cytoplasm is a watery substance containing specialized organelles. Right? Third, inside the cytoplasm is the nucleus that contains most of the genetic material and serves as the control center of the cell. The cell membrane is approximately 0.06 to 0.08 of a micrometer thick, yet allows selective transport into and out of each cell. Now, inside the cytoplasm, there are many different chemical reactions occurring at any one time, with each cell having the following biochemical capabilities. First one being communication. Now, to think that there's communication happening inside of an individual cell, it's crazy. But somehow these organelles within the cell and the nucleus, they know what to do and when to do it and how to do it, like replicating DNA with RNA and moving things in and about. It's amazing that what's happening at that level. So communication takes place. We said waste disposal takes place. So if the waste disposal systems that are present within each individual cell, if those were not functioning, then the cells would become toxic and die. So they each have their own ability for waste disposal. Nutrition, same thing. Repair and reproduction. So on your paper there, it's repair. Now think about that for just a moment. That it could recognize that it's damaged and then fix it. Go ahead. Yes. To be encoded within something that small. Right. Because this is communicating information. Mm-hmm. You've got this data firing back and forth. Mm-hmm. Being recognized and then acted upon. Right. And then carried out. And in addition to that, every one of these cells has the ability for reproduction, which is a whole new data instructional set. Yes. And all that exists at the cellular level. Remember that word I couldn't say last week? Cellular level. This is significant because if you've ever done any computer programming, which is an instructional code, right, that requires a humongous amount of design. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Forethought, if then else, case selection. Yeah. Certainly, because I remember when computers first came out, I know some of you, most of you were present for that. I don't know about you guys back there. But when they first came out, now most people don't know this, but Atari had actual computers, not just gaming systems. And so I got a book for my birthday, and it was how to write programs for math, to do math. I don't remember. I don't think so. I think it was more like command prompts and things like that you could punch in numbers and then it would do the calculations of the math, and basically how to like how a calculator would function. But it was teaching you how to do all that, and it's very complex just to do 2 + 2. It's a complex set of steps and things that were necessary to do that. Now we think about all these different things that are happening within all 100 trillion of our individual cells simultaneously. And then we have people that say that this just evolved over time. And so one of the primary things that we can talk about that refutes this idea is the evolution. We're going to talk about this in our upcoming lessons and specifically. But evolution says that as things change, mutate, whatever, they become more complex. They become more complex. So a simple cell adds the ability through some sort of mutation. Then it can develop more things, and then eventually that happens enough over time and you end up with us. Because that's basically the idea, is this primordial soup that existed, and that there were in this primordial soup the building blocks for life, the amino acids, energy, electricity was introduced to it that formed the first proteins, and then those proteins developed into cells, and single cell creatures eventually developed, and each time they changed, they mutated and became more complex, more complex, more complex. Now here's what we know, having genetic studies and all sorts of microbiology and all these different studies, it's never been witnessed that things become more complex. Most times. There can be such a thing as a favorable mutation, but even so, it's the loss of information, which is interesting. We'll talk about that when we get to those lessons. But so here's the idea. There was a fella, and I want to say it was in the 90s, by the name of Michael Behe, B-E-H-E. And he started working with this idea of intelligent design, and it's called, his idea was called irreducible complexity. And so he was studying what was called the bacterial flagellum. Okay, so we have a single cell creature that has a flagellum, right? Flagellum is basically an outboard motor, tail. Okay, so this outboard motor actually, when they've been able to actually investigate it under high-powered electron microscopes, have multiple parts, gears. For those of you that understand engines and stuff like this would probably interest you, that those things that exist in there, power source that is introduced to this base part of that flagellum, that gives it the energy it needs to fire this tail, and the inner working parts of it are all necessary for this thing, this bacteria, this flagellum, to work. And so the idea of irreducible complexity says that all these things must be there and in the right assembled order and in the right amount and size in order for this to work. So it's not like you had part of a tail that got more of a tail, that had more of an engine, that started out with this one little part, and then it gained this next part, and then another mutation, it gained this part. Irreducible complexity says, no, for this for this creature to live because the bacteria needs to move in order to live. So in its aqueous environment, to move to and fro and do what it needs to do, this flagellum it's its motor to get and do what it needs to do to survive. It needs every part, and it needs them assembled in exactly the right way in order for the flagellum to work, and if the flagellum doesn't work, the creature dies. And so think of it like this. He used the example of the mousetrap. So a common mousetrap, you have 6 or 7 parts. You have the base, you have the spring mechanism, you have a hook and a latch, all these different things that you can take these apart. I think it's 5 or 6, 7 pieces. So we actually talked about this when we did camp one year with the kids. We had, I think, 5th and 6th graders, and so we were talking about creation and irreducible complexity. And to illustrate this to the kids, we took mouse traps and disassembled them, put them in a Ziploc bag, and then during our devotion had the kids sit there and shake it until it assembled itself in exactly the right way. Because if you remove any one of these simple parts from this mousetrap, it doesn't function. It's no longer a mousetrap. It's nothing. It's useless. Now, what's more complex? An outboard motor with all these, and organic, for that part of it as well, it's organic material, or a mousetrap. And so irreducible complexity says, now that's just in a single cell bacterial flagellum. Now think about all the complex things that require, the pièce de résistance of all these things of irreducible complexity is the eye. If you understand, take any amount of time, do a little Google search and just do a little, or if there's a little documentary you could watch on how the eye works, it's incredible. It's incredible how complex, and everything that we're trying to replicate in our fancy phones, right, that have taken researchers and all these different scientific advancements to do what the eye does, they still have not been able to duplicate it exactly. You know, what a camera does on a phone. And so it's pretty incredible. So when we consider the concept of irreducible complexity, saying that all the parts have to be there in their totality in the right way for this thing to live, and this is just a single cell creature, considering everything, the more complex creatures, it's easy to see that irreducible complexity in intelligent design is the most reasonable conclusion when we consider things at the biological level. So let's keep going here. So the nucleus is the control center of the cell and is separated from the cytoplasm by a nuclear membrane, essentially a double plasma membrane. Within the nucleus is the genetic information of the cell, chromosomes made of deoxyribonucleic acid. That's DNA. DNA is a supermolecule that carries the coded information needed to produce all of the components of the cell. If the DNA from a single human body were removed from the nucleus and unraveled, it is found in the cell in a spiral position, right? It would be approximately 6 feet long and would contain approximately 6 billion nucleotides, known as base pairs. So the nucleotides, this is the adenine, the guanine, the cytosine, and the thymine. Those amino acids that are on there, right? They pair up with one another in different pairs. And as they pair up, and they're in different orders, that produces different proteins, and the different proteins produce different things: ears, nose, eyes, hair, all that stuff, in the way that they're ordered. So these pairs that are found in one cell, there are 6 billion nucleotides, these base pairs that are found in the DNA. Now, it is estimated that if all the DNA in an adult human were placed end to end, it would reach to the sun and back. 186 million miles. 400 times. Sun and back. Yeah. 400. Yeah. Yep. Think 100 trillion cells, and then in each cell is the DNA. 6 billion in each cell. 6 billion nucleotide pairs. So 6 billion times 100 trillion. Got that? Yeah. 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 He's like, I got nothing. It's like that gravitational number we did last week, 0.00000. Yeah. Now, it also should be noted that the DNA molecule does something that we as humans have only begun to understand. It stores coded information in a chemical format and then uses enzymes and RNA molecules to decode and utilize the information. DNA is a complex, multi-layered, listen to this, it's an operating system, right? Now, you'll see this OS, right, on stuff. Your computer, the OS, operating system. And so Google has their own operating system. Apple has their own operating system. Computers have their own operating system, like, all these. So the operating system is what controls everything. And so in a cell, in DNA, what's happening, it is a complex, multi-layered operating system. If the information were written in English, the DNA in a single human cell would fill a 300-volume set of encyclopedias of approximately 2,000 pages each. Yet just as amazing is the fact that all the genetic information needed to reproduce the entire human population, which is about 8 billion people, could be placed into the space of about 1/8 of a cubic inch. In fact, chromosomes, which are the individual segments of the genome, are compacted around 10,000-fold in order to fit within the nucleus. The human genome is truly a fascinating marvel that we are just beginning to understand. Further, we know that there is a level of control and regulation above the genome called the epigenome. Old claims that 98% of the human genome is junk DNA have been destroyed by the discoveries of the last decade. In fact, the ENCODE project, a multinational collaborative research initiative examining the function of the genome, stated in 2012 that over 80% of the genome has now been assigned a biochemical function thus far. So what we're figuring out is they can examine the genome and then figure out what it does. And so where they said they used to say 98% of it's junk, 2% is all, that's what produces what we know. Like blue eyes, you ever do the old Punnett squares, right? For the brown eyes and blue eyes, big B, little b, and you combine all those and say, right? Well, now they're up to 80%. They figured out 80% of it. And they'll figure out the other 20 if they, because I'm sure 100% of it is for a purpose, because it's designed. It's not junk. Now, this is an astounding testimony to the grand design of the genome. The information content of the genome could not have arisen by chance via random mutations plus natural selection. Only intelligence is able to design a code like the human genome. You never find information and language apart from intelligence. Information and language is always tied to a mind. It's not randomness. Go ahead. Talking about language itself? Yeah. So written languages show a greater progression of intelligence. Absolutely. So what then may we say about the amazing genetic code found within the DNA in each cell. The complexity of the DNA molecule, along with the staggering amount of chemically coded information it contains, proves that this supermolecule simply could not have happened by blind chance. An intelligent designer is demanded by the evidence. So, if you were talking to somebody, see, this is what I was able to talk about in the class 9 at LBC. This is all fun, right? This is cool to know. And it should strengthen our own faith. But if we're just, the whole idea here is to be able to communicate these things. And tying this to what we're doing on Sunday nights is to provide us with tools in order to have conversations where, you might be able to have an opportunity to really share this stuff. And so if you're dealing with someone and they say, well, I can't buy it, that there's such a thing as God. Right? And you've asked the appropriate questions, and if you got to the point where you're like, man, maybe I should bring out these ideas of the cosmological argument, the idea of cause and effect, or the idea of and be able just to bring, scribble this on a napkin, and then say, let's just Google it. Let's look at, pull out your phone and let's look at the universe and the scope of the universe and the design and look at the anthropic constants and those are just simple little things that you could pull out and then talk about the DNA as information and how much information is in one cell. Be equipped with these things that you might be able to have these conversations and really put a stone in somebody's shoe, get them really thinking about these things. So that was design that we see in the universe. There's evidence of design in the universe itself, the scope of the universe, and also evidence of design within the human body. Now let's look at a couple more. We're going to look at design in the animal kingdom. These are kind of fun. Now, I don't know if any of y'all like to watch like documentaries on the animals, like the nature shows and things. They're a little frustrating sometimes because they always work in their worldview to it, right? Millions and billions of years and all that kind of stuff, and Mother Nature and Father Time, all that stuff. Now, I think I saw that there's a project happening right now that looks quite impressive. That's the quality of the science and the study and the filmmaking for the nature documentaries that is done from a Christian worldview. I need to find that out because it'd be better to watch things that operate within our worldview to reinforce that we don't have to weed out all the stuff to see the good. So let's talk about design in the animal kingdom. Now, many bird watchers and animal lovers have grown to love and appreciate the evident design of the natural world. Now, this isn't on here, but this got me to thinking, right? One day, I was at the house with Sherlana. It was a Thursday when I had her. And we were, I don't know what we were doing, in the living room. And then we heard, coming from the back, we heard this. Ow, that hurts. Really loud. And I'm like, what in the world? We jump up and we run to the back because first of all you think, well, that sounds like somebody knocking on the door, but it was much louder and more like a daggone jackhammer. I look out and there's two giant woodpeckers. One was a lookout hanging upside down looking around, right? And the other one was just boom, on the back porch. And now if you ever have those daggone wood borer bees, the woodpeckers apparently love the larva that gets up in there. That's where and so they were after that. It was so loud. And so, now have you ever thought about this, right? You watch the NFL, and what's the number one concern these days? Concussions, right? Because if they hit their heads, they're toast. Their brain's mush. It gets bruised, they can't function, headaches, nausea, vomiting, they can't think. What about that woodpecker? With its beak connected to its head, it is, yeah, well, bird brain, right? Now here's the thing. What are the chances that that skull and brain is designed in such a way that it can handle that incredible pressure and from that action. And then not only that, had the ability and the muscle structure, the skeletal structure, the beak that would penetrate wood so it could eat. And then not have a headache when he was done. Yeah. Yeah. Me. Yeah, so that's one thing. Now let's talk about a bird. All right? The bird with a thermometer in its beak. This is cool. Now we all remember our temperature being taken when we were sick. Sometimes we had to hold the thermometer on our tongue for around 60 seconds. As technology advanced, however, stop. I know what you're thinking. Yeah. As technology, the thermometers thankfully changed. Yeah. So, as technology advanced, however, newer thermometers were developed that could be inserted into the ear, taking only a few seconds to measure temperature. But there is an Australian bird called the mallee fowl that has a built-in thermometer which is far more accurate than the ones humans use to take their temperature. When the time comes for the female mallee fowl to lay her eggs, the male bird digs a pit into the ground and piles a large amount of sticks and leaves in the pit. He covers the pile with sand, sometimes making it as tall as 4 feet. With the sand on top, the leaves and sticks begin to rot, which produces heat. The male makes a hole in the top of the mound where the female then lays a single egg. About a week later, he will make another hole and she will lay another egg. This process goes on until there are about 18 eggs in the nest. Several times a day, the male pokes his beak into the mound. He then sticks out his tongue, which is a good thermometer that can measure a temperature change of 1/10 of a degree. If the mound is too hot, he removes some of the sand. If it is too cool, he adds more sand. After about 7 weeks of incubation, the babies hatch. All by accident. Time and chance. It's just one bird, right? Now, how does the mallee fowl know the exact temperature to keep its eggs? How'd they figure that out? Were the first two like, well, Frida, I think we ought to shoot for 28 degrees Celsius and see what happens. I'll give it a try, Frank. So how did they know this? How did they know? How did they know that rotting leaves covered by sand would actually produce heat to be a natural incubator? How does its tongue measure temperature changes of 1/10 of a degree? It's simple, right? The mallee fowl was designed. And design demands a designer. Let's talk about, now I've actually seen footage of this. This is cool. The beetle with a bomb in its belly. Bomb. The bombardier beetle is another creature that shows incredible design. It has a pulse defense mechanism that works as follows. 2 chemicals, hydrogen peroxide and hydroquinones, are produced in the glands and then stored in a large reservoir housed within the beetle's abdomen. When the animal is threatened, muscles surrounding the reservoir contract, pushing the chemicals through a valve into a heart-shaped reaction chamber lined with cells that secrete peroxidases and catalases. These are oxidative enzymes. These enzymes quickly break down the hydrogen peroxide and catalyze the hydroquinones into P-benzoquinones compounds for their irritant properties. This chemical reaction, listen to this, results in a release of free oxygen and heat. The beetle ejects the spray out of a revolvable turret. So it's basically a Gatling gun, right? At 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah. in a pulse-like fashion at 500 pulses per second. You've actually seen this video of this. Oh, I don't know, but it's an incredible weapon. The beetle itself, how far? I honestly don't know. It was. We'd have to look that up. But I've seen. Did he show that bombardier beetle? He sure did, didn't he? Great memory. Yes, when Ryan was here, he talked about the bombardier beetle. Now, he had a specific reason why he was talking about it. Anybody remember that reason? Think about the subject matter. What? Yes. That there was possibly one of the dinosaurs that had this same sort of capability, but rather than it being on its backside, out its front side. Right? Yeah. Now, think of irreducible complexity. You heard about all those specific chemicals and enzymes and chambers, and then these chambers that worked like a pulse-like cannon at 500 revolutions per second. Think of irreducible complexity in a mousetrap. 20 centimeters? So what's that? Here he goes. Yeah. Okay, 24 centimeters is an inch? Yeah, so centimeters. Okay, I don't want to OK Google on my phone. It might goof it up. Centimeters are a little bit bigger. Come on now, Kelly. 20 centimeters equals. Oh, she's the news? 20 7.8 inches is 20 centimeters. Yeah, is that what she said? Yeah, that's pretty good distance from a small little beetle. Yeah. You wouldn't be like, hey, little buddy. Right in the eyes. You wouldn't want that. Now, can you imagine trying to explain all of this intricate design by chance and evolutionary processes occurring over millions of years in nature? The fact is, only intelligent design can explain how the beetle is able to produce the proper chemicals, keep them separate until they are needed, manufacture the right enzymes, and propel the hot mixture into the face of its enemy. So, in conclusion, on the teleological argument, the only people who have difficult... Now, if you recall, go back to the beginning. We said that people who argue this will be like, yeah, every design needs a designer, right? And we can even see that maybe the things in the universe in our world appear designed. That's the word they'll use. But they'll say there's not sufficient evidence of design that would require a designer. It is. And really, how much have we really looked at here on a Wednesday night of all the available evidence? Yeah, the percentage. We looked at the things in the universe, but we just talk about it in very general terms, the anthropic principles. But yeah, there's much more. I've got a book in there called Signature in the Cell. You want some good nighttime reading? It's very complex. Stephen Meyer, great guy on intelligent design. Just on the cell itself, he goes into all the things. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages on just the cell itself and everything that's happening in there. We go back to Darwin, right? He looked under the microscope, he just saw these kind of interconnected blobs. There's no way that he himself would hold to his viewpoint and his conclusions if he were able to see what we can see today. It's just not possible. And so the only people who have difficulty understanding the implications of design are those who have refused to have God in their knowledge, Romans 1:28. Such people can say there is no designer, but their arguments are not convincing. One does not get a poem without a poet or a law without a lawgiver. One does not get a painting without a painter or a musical score without a composer. And just as surely, one does not get purposeful design without a designer. The design that is all over this universe, from the giant universe to the tiny cell, it is apparent. And it is definitely sufficient to draw the conclusion demanded by the law of rationality that says that we only accept those conclusions for which there is adequate evidence. And we've got tons of it. Simply as this, that God does exist. So that is cosmological argument, and then we'll have the teleological argument. And next week, you already have your papers. Larry, do you know what you're going to be teaching on? Yeah, I'll come to you. Oh, the clarion voices of God. Yeah, voice of God. Awesome. Yeah, Larry's going to share with us. Okay, I think we need some blanks. B2, chemical. Chemical reaction. Chemical reaction. Anybody else need any others? Got them? Sufficient is the last one. Sufficient. I've got them all here, so. Okay. Yep. Now, here's what I've determined. And you may have already noticed this, you may have not. On lesson 7, there are no blanks. So, I have noticed that we've struggled a little bit with this dynamic in this class of trying to keep up with that, and I don't want you to get lost trying to fill a blank. So, we're not going to do that anymore, because you know, the reason behind it is to keep you engaged. You know, to say, okay, this is where we're at, and we want to keep you following along. But I'll trust you guys to follow along, because I don't want you to get lost to the point too. You're like, you know, that you're so focused on trying to fill that in, you can't really listen to what we're talking about. So that's what we're going to do moving forward. Do you need something? You're going to have to be more specific. This lesson, from the beginning. Okay. All right. Is there anybody that needs others from this lesson? Because if it's just you, I'll just give you the papers and then you can. Brendan, okay, here we go. All right. The law of rationality, the first one, the word is adequate. Second blank on the first page is justify. Third blank on the first page is design. Without a poet, a law without a lawgiver. Then down at the bottom, exact scientific laws. And 93 billion light years. Page 2. The Earth is exactly the correct distance. The oceans provide a huge reservoir. We depend upon plants for our oxygen supply. Next one is the anthropic principle. Fine-tuned, designed. Then the examples of anthropic constants, the E is gravity. Next page is the first blank is a Boeing, B-O-E-I-N-G, Boeing 747. On the design of the human body, we have our good friend Father Time. The human body is the result of purposeful design. On point C, under the design of the human body, is purposeful. Point E is 100 trillion. Point D is repair. And we're good on page 4? Everybody good on page 4? Okie dokie. Well, we'll stop here. And then we'll pick up next week with Larry's study, and then the week after that we'll begin with the moral argument for God's existence. It's an excellent argument. Okay.